Hi, my name is Jen, and I have 4 new books to review for you for tonight's Adult Services Book Talk. The first title I'm going to talk about is Ann Tyler's latest, Redhead by the Side of the Road. Ann Tyler, you probably know her as the author of A Spool of Blue Thread. She also wrote Breathing Lessons and The Accidental Traveler. And her most recent one, Clock Dance, I really enjoyed. I recommend that one highly. That one was about a widow who leaves her life in Arizona to go to Baltimore and care for her son's ex-girlfriend's daughter. And it's a great character story. It's a great evocative piece of life in Baltimore and of a older woman who makes a huge life change. This one is a little bit different. It's about a 40-something-year-old man who lives by himself. He's the super of a building. He also does tech consultations, like one-on-one tech related questions, computer repair, that kind of thing. He's an extreme underachiever. He has a big family who is boisterous, but he kind of doesn't fit in with them. His sisters, his nieces and nephews, his brothers-in-law. He doesn't really fit in. He's a little bit of a loner. He does have a girlfriend who dumps him because he can't read the signals of what she wants out of the relationship. So he's kind of, he's a loner, and he's picky, and he's just set in his ways kind of guy. And this is kind of about how he changes his ways a little bit because he has a visit from his ex-girlfriend's son, who is now a teenager, and he kind of interacts with the young man and helps the young man out with a life problem, and then kind of sees how he should help himself out in his own life. I didn't love this one. I read everything by Ann Tyler because I think she's an amazing author, and I love everything that she writes set in Baltimore. I think she really does a great service to that city by her sense of place there. But one thing I didn't like was that I didn't find the main character very likable, and the other thing was that I did find that a lot of her dialogue that she wrote was a little, I would say, just not believable for younger people to speak in a certain way. She has, for example, one character is in her early 20s, maybe even 20, 21 years old, and she is saying things like, when she meets somebody, she says, "How do you do?" I just don't see any young person saying it like that. There's other examples of how people talk that I just don't think are true to life. So that kind of bothered me, but at the same time, I did enjoy the book. It was a quick read, and if you read Ann Tyler generally, then you should read Redhead by the Side of the Road. The next one that I want to talk about is Simon the Fiddler by Paulette Giles. I want to start out by saying I highly recommend it. Paulette Giles wrote one of my favorite books of 2016. So a couple years ago, she wrote News of the World, and it was about a traveling newsreader on the prairie in the 1860s, I believe, 1870s. And that's actually going to be made into a movie with Tom Hanks as the main character, and I think it's going to be amazing. It was definitely one of my favorite books of that year. Simon the Fiddler, I wouldn't say it's my favorite book of 2020, but it was excellent. I really enjoyed it. It was funny. It was heartbreaking. It was a historical fiction piece of a time and a place that I didn't really know much about, but I got a really good sense of it from her writing. Basically, this man Simon is a fiddler, very talented fiddle player, and he avoids conscription into the army during the Civil War by resourcefully avoiding both the Union and the Confederate recruiters for the army. He's from Kentucky. He plays all around the South at private parties and events, and just in general, like in saloons and that kind of thing. And there's a couple of scenes where he is able to avoid the draft soldiers that try to get him into either the Union or the Confederate army. Some of them are kind of inventive and clever, the way he avoids them. He does eventually get conscripted into the Confederate Army when they're on their last legs in Texas, and they're, he's in the final battle of the Confederacy in Texas, and it's just like a ragtag bunch of soldiers, and he gets conscripted to be in the band as a fiddler. So he plays, after the last battle when the Confederacy surrenders, he ends up playing for a Union colonel's family at a luncheon, and he falls in love with the family's Irish governess, who is, he doesn't even speak to her, or he speaks to her once to ask her what song she would like to hear, and doesn't see her again for an entire year, but he spends that next entire year trying to get back to her and to make himself worthy of her, and to get her away from the family that she's indentured into in San Antonio. So it's, like I said, it's, parts of it are really heartbreaking, parts of it are funny, parts of it are just super interesting about the history of what Texas was like after the Civil War. So I would definitely recommend Simon the Fiddler by Paulette Giles. The third book I want to talk about is called A Shadow Intelligence by Oliver Harris. Oliver Harris has written a couple thrillers before, but this is his first spy novel. And I picked it up because I am coming off of a serious obsession with Homeland. I watched the final season. I had been a fan of Homeland for years, and I just was obsessed with it. So I was really into wanting to read spy novels. This one came in, and it's actually about a British intelligence officer in MI6. And he is very mysteriously coming off of a mission in the Middle East, and he comes back to have like a debrief session with his superiors, and it doesn't go as well as he thought it would go. There's a little bit of suspicion surrounding him. So he kind of goes back to recharge, goes home to recharge, but then realizes that he goes to check his emails when he goes home, and there's a mysterious email from his former partner and woman that he was in a relationship with that was coded. That means she's in trouble. So he decides to go off mission and go to Kazakhstan, where he believes that the email was sent from, where she was last seen. So it was not like I thought it was going to be. It wasn't like really cloak and dagger spy novel. It was more tech oriented, and it was about what can happen when CGI is used to create videos, or bots are used to impersonate people on the internet. So that was pretty interesting, although extremely confusing at times. I didn't understand a lot of what was going on in this plot for a long time, but I kept at it because I was really interested in the setting of Kazakhstan, which I knew nothing about, but it was extremely evocative of a former part of the former Soviet Republic that is now its own country, has in the story has a dictator, a benevolent dictator, I guess, as its ruler, and but is extremely land is coveted by oil and gas companies there. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different shades of what is happening in the plot. So it was quite convoluted at times, but I stuck with it. I didn't love it, but I would be interested in seeing in the next book in the series, if it is going to be a series, how Oliver Harris develops the main character a little bit more. I felt like he remained mysterious to me throughout the entire book, whereas I was hoping that I would get to know him more. So I enjoyed it, but I was confused. But I would definitely stick with this one. Okay, the last book, I actually didn't finish this one yet. I'm in the middle of it. It's called The Mountains Wild by Sara Stuart Taylor. It's a crime novel. And my colleague PJ passed it on to me because she saw it come in the new book pile and thought that I would enjoy it. She knows I love novels set in Ireland. She knows I'm obsessed with the ton of French novels, and that I might enjoy this one. So I started reading it to give it a try, and was immediately sucked in because the main character is a single mom in her 40s who is a police detective with the Suffolk County Police Department. She lives in a fictional town on the North Shore of Long Island. This book actually, in the first couple of pages, references New York Avenue and the smokestack towers in Northport, which she calls the Lilco Towers. So that was pretty fun to see, like, local landmarks that we would know. But what the premise of the book is that her cousin, she's Irish American, and her cousin, who she was really close with, moved to Ireland years ago and disappeared. The family has lived with not knowing what happened to the cousin for many, many years until there's a tip one day, and the police force in Ireland calls her uncle, and her uncle asks the main character, Maggie, to go over and follow up on the tip. So I'm really excited to see what happens. There was a case back in the 90s in real life. An American woman from Long Island, Annie McCarrick, moved to Ireland to study, and she disappeared in the Wicklow Mountains, never has been found again. And that was definitely a case I remember hearing about, and completely mysterious. Like, this woman, she was seen at a pub in the Wicklow Mountains and then never again for the last 25 years. So I'm assuming that Sara Stuart Taylor knew about that case and based the plot of this book off of that case, because it follows it pretty closely from what I've read so far. So I'm really interested in finishing this book, and so far it's got Irish America down pretty well. So I'm hoping that, I'm very picky when it comes to Irish settings and Irish characters, that they're modern and that they're true to life. So I'm hoping that she's gotten it right. Tana French gets it right. Some other authors that do these made-up names and made-up place names that I just get really picky and annoyed with, so I don't read them, but this one seems to be doing well. So I will give you an update on this one, hopefully the next time I do an Adult Services Book Talk. So thanks for listening tonight, and I hope that you'll be able to put some of these on reserve, and I will pop a graphic up on Facebook with all the titles.